Hello, hello, and welcome to Self-Care is Sexy. My name is Chris, and I'll be your host. We're a weekly podcast that's here to generate and share self-care ideas with each other. Last week, I brought you a bonus episode for Thanksgiving, and we talked all about the different things that were brought up in a virtual Self-Care is Sexy meeting. And I want to share with you that if you want to be a part of these virtual get-togethers, just talking about self-care, what's working, what's not, new ideas, new products, things like that, hit me up via email. It's Chris, K-R-I-S, at selfcareissexy.com. If you missed that episode, or if you want to binge listen and catch up on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Spreaker, Podbean, PodNation, and really anywhere you find your podcasts, including our website, www.selfcareissexy.com. All right, I want to give you a quick preview of what to expect from today's show. Today, I'm bringing you a conversation that I had with Erika Ancien, and we met in the most interesting of ways. I simply shared with her on Instagram that I loved her post. I follow the hashtag self-care is sexy, and you should too. If you're really working on making self-care the priority, on tending to your own needs first, this is a great way to start. Clean up your feed and fill it full of positive, self-reflective messages and encouragement. So I hit her up on Instagram. We got talking. I loved her vibe. She's an incredible yogi from Southern California, and I just had to have her on the show. So we talk all about her making the switch from a corporate lifestyle to really following her passion and doing what makes her feel alive and wakes her up and excited for the day. We also talk about how important it is to do the little things on a daily basis, including the way you talk about yourself internally as well as externally. We get into some great talks, and I'm so excited to share her with you. Without further ado, here's my interview with Erika Ancien.
Well, why don't we get started this afternoon by first having you introduce yourself to our listeners. Tell us a little bit about you and sort of your journey from Portland to now Southern California and kind of your wellness brand and what you're all about.
Sure, I would love to. So my name is Erika Ancien. I am essentially a yoga instructor and personal trainer. I run my own wellness consulting business as in conjunction with that, though. So my whole idea is that wellness is impossibly just physical, so it really encompasses everything from lifestyle, sleep patterns, stress patterns, nutrition, and trying to be a bridge to make that a little more accessible, because wellness can be very overwhelming, especially with, all the newest crazes that keep popping up left, right, and center.
Yeah, it is really hard, bettering yourself. It's hard to know which brand or which direction works best for you. I love that you're talking about being a bridge and that it's not just physical, because I think when people hear about wellness or coaches, personal coaches, they always just think about a personal trainer who's going to be yelling at them to do another burpee. Or
Yeah, and that's the traditional, trainer that has always been kind of a symbol of fitness and health. And, they always say that the healer heals best in the aspect that they healed from. So I know my journey, I was not always in wellness. I was in sales and a lot of corporate positions, and I just found myself very inhibited and constricted, and it wasn't in something I was passionate about. I struggled with a little bit of weight gain during that period of time and just felt entirely out of my body. But I found that doing strictly exercise wasn't cutting it. I really needed to take a look at my nutrition and the reasons behind why I was making my nutrition choices. And then that led me to kind of discover other areas like the stresses in my life and where I was neglecting to take care of myself and do self-care.
Was there a point that able you to make that decision to shift from like a more corporate sales job to this completely different world of wellness and coaching? Like, was there a moment where you're like, I can't take it anymore?
There was several, yes. And so I kind of towed the line for a while, and I did half and half. And that just completely increased my stress levels because I was training in the morning, training clients in the morning. I think I would start at like 5:30 and 6 a.m. clients, and then I would go to work, and then I would go teach classes in the evening. And
wow,
why don't I love my life anymore? and I just took a real quick inventory, and I was like, when am I happiest? And surprisingly, it was at 4:30 in the morning when I was getting up, because I knew people were excited to be doing what I was going to be doing with them. They were waiting for me. So it was an accountability that I needed to show up because they were showing up too. And I knew that there was a difference being made in their lives and in their day-to-day. And I found that all dissipate when I went to work. So yeah, it did happen a little bit gradually because I did it part-time for about 2 years almost. So that was kind of crazy and hectic. And then I realized I was like, no, this is the direction where I find most fulfillment. So
that's awesome. Yeah. It's really hard sometimes if you are engaged in like a passion project and you've got sort of one foot on the boat and one on the dock, and there's really no stability in that. And that type of lifestyle, that hyper productive, multi-focus is really it's not sustainable, honestly.
It isn't. It's not. It's also people talk about multitasking in general, and eventually if you were speaking with one foot on the dock, one foot on the boat, eventually one's going to pull away faster. And you've got to go with that split that you're doing in the air. That's not good. It's not good for anyone. Yeah.
During that time of decision to sort of shift your career focus, how did you finally just say, okay, I'm making that leap, I'm taking that jump?
It was a couple of things, because in that jump, there's still a massive amount of uncertainty. And everybody's measure for that is different. Everyone's fear factor. Some people don't need any sort of promise of what's going to happen and they just go. And other people need, a lot more than that. So I think it was really starting to build an awareness of what I needed in order to just do it. And so I saved a little bit of money, probably not enough as I needed to, if I'm really honest. And I'm more of a jump before you think person. So I jumped in, and I had full expectations that everything would just come flooding in. And I had no idea about the stress that I was leaving stress of doing double time, but the stress that I was jumping into was also stress of not knowing what I'm doing, and then the uncertainty of income coming in. So I guess to answer your question, I finally pulled the trigger when I had just realized out of my own self-awareness I'd maxed myself out doing what I was doing. I had to choose doing what I was passionate about because that was the only thing getting me up in the morning. And I had saved enough of an amount in my bank to make me feel okay, and there's never going to be a perfect amount. You can't save forever because you're going to have all these unknowns come at you regardless. I would just say just a little bit is good. And when you're pushed into a corner, you will find the rest.
Yeah.
Trust me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would think also in that decision-making process, you had to make sure in all of that, in order to not lose your mind and go crazy, that you're taking care of yourself, and that at the focus of it is what's best for you. Making that choice to leap into the unknown, that's a big macro self-care. But on the micro level, what were you doing on that day-to-day to make sure that you were feeling good and taken care of, and that you had self-care and that you were getting what you needed in that transition?
Yeah, I love that you call it a big macro because it really was. But you're so right in recognizing that the micros, they all add up to the ability to do that macro, right? So the macros for me were really staying on top of my nutrition. In those corporate workplaces, I'm sure we've all kind of encountered it, that, your go-to snacks are usually donuts brought in by vendors or, they're terribly, amazingly delicious. And then they just really provide for you to crash. From the sugar crash, you then feel, upset at yourself for not having made a good choice, and then it begets a spiral. So my nutrition, I was okay with saying no to things that were offered to me. I would say about 6 months or so, when I was like, okay, I'm starting to get really, really stressed. Where do I need to start planning to make my exit plan? So while I was still at work, I was really on top of my nutrition. And then I was super stringent also with saying no to obligations outside of my goal, my plan.
That's awesome.
I mean, that was very helpful. And there was so many things that I wanted to go to or felt obliged to go to, and almost felt guilty, in several instances, saying no, like birthdays and this and that. But when you have a schedule that was of my nature, of the mornings training and then working and then training at night, I wasn't showing up as my best ability. I wasn't thriving if I was going out to, a birthday party just to show up. And then even showing up in those circumstances, I wasn't present either, because I was thinking, oh, I'm really tired. I'm not feeling so great. And so it's just a lose-lose situation. So nutrition, sleep, and saying no to things that I just simply couldn't do. And we're all human.
Yeah, I love that you point that out, that when we don't make self-care the priority, if we're not focused on really managing ourselves, that then, a half-assed version shows up.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
And then that feels icky, right? You've added like layers of uncomfortability because you're not engaging with the people you're spending time with. You're in your head, and yeah, that is a spiral for sure. So I want to know, now that you've followed your dream, you've made this big lifestyle change, and now you're helping other people and you're empowering them. What's the biggest difference that you see now in the life that you lead now? Because I've been checking out your Instagram, and Erika, it looks like you are doing some amazing work. So I've got to know,
so kind.
What's the biggest change that you've experienced from being in sales and being in that corporate world, and now being this incredible healer and spreader of positivity?
You're so sweet. Can you do my morning mantras every day, please?
I mean, sure.
You're so kind. Awesome. I'll just call you up for my pep talks whenever I need them. Well, thank you. I would say that for me was learning that self-care was really rooted in self-love. And that's what it is to me. Every expression of self-care is a result of self-love, and that connection that you have to yourself, and putting it as a non-negotiable. There's something also that I've heard you say, that it's not something to be done after you've done everything else. It's really something that is a part of your day. It's a part of you. It's really feeding the machine. It's how much do you put yourself first, and we just have lived, I think, for so long, especially as women, in this caretaker role, in this kind of almost martyrdom sort of society of, well, I must take care of this person and that and this first, and then maybe, possibly never get to yourself. And it really is just putting the oxygen mask on yourself first. But if you take that back a step further, what I found for me is all of that is really great in theory, and you can listen to it till the cows come home, until someday you might find someone who really says the words that land with you. But if you don't have any self-awareness, if you have no idea how to monitor yourself, it's not going to land at all. You're not going to feel anything that anyone recommends isn't going to fit you like a glove. And that's the thing with self-care, is that it's so different for everybody, because everyone's going through different things. And I think it's also so different for yourself, because maybe, Chris, the self-care that you want is a glass of wine on a Wednesday night this week. Next Wednesday, maybe you need to go and take a fast power walk to just get that energy out.
Yeah.
It's not always the same thing.
Yeah, and we have to allow ourselves the uncomfortable nature of coming up against something that's challenging or difficult or that you're